Hey, good morning.
Good morning, Noah.
I won't be able to stay on past 9:30. I had a meeting that came up today, but I'll stay on until 9:30 and then I'll submit my comments in writing.
Perfect. Thank
Thank
you,
you.
Noah. Let's see. So we have morning, Noah, Jennifer, and then I think we're waiting for Clark, I believe.
Neil, did you have a confirmation from Clark for this meeting?
I did for Clark.
Okay.
The only people I did not hear from were Barbara and Patrick.
Yeah, let's give it like another 2 minutes, maybe.
I think he's coming in now.
There he is. Oh, and Patrick's here. Okay, great.
Perfect.
All right. What do we think? I'm probably gonna get going here.
It
All right.
looks like you're good to go.
Okay, great. Thanks, Rebecca. Okay, so thank you everybody for joining me. I would like to call to order the Malibu Environmental Review Board meeting of Wednesday, June 26, 2024. This meeting is being held by teleconference. Boards and city staff are participating from remote locations. Members of the public can participate in the meeting via Zoom. Members of the public wishing to speak during the meeting must click the raise hand button at the top of the screen to indicate a desire to speak after the item has been announced by the chair and must be present in the teleconference when called upon to be recognized. Once called upon, please lower your hand in the Zoom meeting. Board members, if you have comments to make during this meeting, please raise your hand using the raise hand link at the bottom of your screen, and I will call on you in turn so we can make our discussion clear for the record and for the public. Okay, let's move on to written and oral communications from staff and the board. Rebecca, is this the? Okay.
Yes, please.
Okay, so we do have an announcement to make. The City of Malibu Planning Department is deeply saddened to announce the passing of an ERB member, Anthony Schaefer. Mr. Schaefer diligently served the City of Malibu Environmental Review Board from 2007 to 2024, contributing his expertise in fire ecology and behavior as it relates to new development. We at the City of Malibu send our deepest condolences to his family and our deepest gratitude for his service to the city and its residents.
Thank you, Courtney. And
Thank you.
On a personal note, I would just, like to extend my condolences to his family members. It was, of course, a shock, and it's quite a loss to the group to not have that level of expertise in fire behavior that we had with him before. I really appreciate the years of service he provided to the city through this organization. I did also want to announce that moving forward, Gail Duncan will be working more closely with the Environmental Review Board, and as your recording secretary, I'll pop in with you here and there as she takes her next trip to Paris, for instance, if we overlap with an Environmental Review Board meeting. And thank you to all of you for your ongoing service to the group. It's been a pleasure working with you.
Thank you so much, Rebecca. We will move on to item 2, which is old business, and I'm seeing none. Is that still the case?
Yes.
Okay, so for new business, I am going to turn it over to Senior Planner Brooks for a staff report.
Thank you, Courtney. I did not know Mr. Schaefer transitioned. I'm going to miss his expertise and passion for fire safety. Good morning. Renika Brooks, Senior Planner with the Malibu Planning Department, and I'm here to present CDP number 23-076, It's an application for a new single-family residence and associated development located at 31587 Pacific Coast Highway. Because of the project's encroachment into the fuel modification encroachment into the ESHA, the project also includes a variance number 24-008. Those impacts related to ESHA will be mitigated through the payment of in-lieu fees. Next slide, please. Depicted here is the vicinity map of the project location. It's located between Encino Canyon Road and Trancas Canyon Road, located within the RR10 zoning designation. Again, the project includes the construction of a new one-story single-family residence and associated development. Next slide, please. And here is a closer view of the subject property. As you can see, it's an elongated site that with the northernmost reach up to the city boundary. The site for the construction is located on the flattest portion of the property. The topography ascends from an elevation from approximately 163 feet above sea level all the way up to about 892 feet. The steeper slopes north of the proposed site of construction is dominated with coastal sage scrub. Next slide, please. And here are the next couple of slides include photos of the existing site conditions with the story pole installation. This is looking west from PCH. Next slide, please. And this is looking east from PCH. Next slide, please. And here's a site plan showing the location of the proposed development area. On the left is a larger portion of the property showing its proximity to Pacific Coast Highway. And then on the right is a closer view of the footprint of the development. The project has been reviewed for consistency with the ESHA development standards, which limits the development area to 10,000 square feet. And again, it's a 4,419 square foot single family residence with an included a 2-car attached garage, a pool, driveway, grading, retaining walls, on-site wastewater treatment system, and a biofiltration system. Next slide, please. And depicted here is the ESHA delineation map showing the proposed fuel modification for the proposed residence. And again, as depicted here, it's showing the zones B and C encroach into the ESHA. The cross-hatched area within the fuel modification is the area that shows the clearance that was done without the benefit of permits. That area will also be mitigated through the payment of in-lieu fees. Next slide, please. And that concludes my presentation. I'm available for any questions. I believe the property owner and his architect are also available. Thank you.
Sorry, I was talking muted. Thank you so much, Renika. I really appreciate that. I think we're going to give the applicant, who I believe is present, Rodney, his 15 minutes. If he would like to have, Rodney, do you have a presentation?
No, I just was going to talk briefly about the project and certainly here to answer any kind of questions.
Sure. Yeah, so you have 15 minutes and we can keep track
Okay.
of whatever time.
Got it. Well, it won't take that long. So, you know, the basic approach to this project when we looked at it from the very outset was to develop a smaller home on what is a significantly larger lot. I think if you look at the calculations, we could have developed a home of up to about 12,000 square feet. We actually ended up at the 4,400 square foot home. It's a single family home. The site location was set after a significant analysis of grading needs, of the need for setbacks off PCH with there's an easement in addition to the Caltrans easements, being able to put in a drainage detention basin and to minimize impact into any ESHA zones. And I know it's not significant, but also with the single families, with the single story home, to be able to minimize any kind of impacts to neighboring views. We went through some pretty extensive early on meetings with the city to make sure that we were all in agreement with the specific location. Renika did mention the overcleared area. That was a mistake when I purchased this property and hired a contractor to do my fire clearance. The property next to me clears way up the hill, and they inadvertently cleared area that shouldn't have been cleared. It has since grown back. Our biologist has looked at it, and I've agreed to pay a in lieu fee. I believe it's about $7,000 that's been calculated by the Santa Monica Conservatory Zone because of that mistake. But it's something I took responsibility for from day one. And, I think we found an appropriate cure for that. The house has had a few governing items that have pushed a little bit of the area further up the hills, most specifically the requirement by the fire department for a hammerhead turnaround on the property. But we still, if you look at our fire clearance plan, we hopefully are going to have minimal fire clearance. The biologist has suggested that there's an area that is to what would be the northeast of the property that we would work with the fire department to try to minimize any clearance of that area, which we'll certainly do as the project goes on. So that's kind of an overview of our approach, how we looked at this, and how we developed the plans. And I'm here for any questions that anyone has with regards to those efforts.
Okay, perfect. Thank you so much. So that was 3 minutes. You still have 12 minutes should you need it.
No, I don't. I think unless there's questions, I think it's pretty straightforward, but certainly here to answer any questions that come forward.
Okay, thank you, Rodney.
Okay.
I also wanted to open the item for public comments. I'm not seeing any public in here, but I just wanted to double check with Gail if there's any public present.
I'm not certain if Ron Heston is part of the applicant team.
No, he's the architect.
Okay, perfect.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, so we're good. No public comment at this time.
Or CWC is also part of the applicant team.
That's Jennifer.
That's Jennifer, perfect.
Yes. There she is. Hey, Jennifer. Okay, perfect. Okay, so then I think we will open it up to deliberations by the ERB members. I wanted to give Noah a chance to comment since she's leaving at 9:30. If you're ready, Noah. If not, we can open it up to any ERB member.
Sure. Actually, I was hoping to have a little bit more of a description of, what's being asked. If somebody could pull up the slide with the site plan, and just describe the setting and the distance of the fuel modification area that we're being asked to approve here, and where it ends, and how the project proposes to prevent overclearance in the future as well.
Okay, yeah, thank you for that. So this is the image, the delineation that was provided by the consulting biologist. I guess the yellow is not considered ESHA, it's the green area that we're looking at. So we have the footprint of the proposed residence. The first buffer around that is a 30-foot buffer for Zone A. The next buffer is Zone B, which I believe is 70 feet. And then the last buffer is Zone C, which is the brush clearance, which is an additional 100 feet. I also failed to mention that there is a drainage feature that traverses the site. You can see it delineated here. The consulting biologist determined that because it doesn't provide riparian habitat, that it isn't considered a protected drainage feature under the LCP. nor does it require any permitting or clearance from the California Department of Fish and Wildlife. So again, we're looking at the impacts from Zone B, which is an irrigated zone, the second buffer, and Zone C, which is the brush clearance. So I guess if you're looking for like where you would tailor your comments to, it may be the landscape plan. The landscape plan does include woodland trees between PCH and the residents. But you might want to also direct your attention to the landscaping that's behind the residents that encroaches closer to the ESHA.
Yeah, Noah, so I see your hand raised. Do you have
Yeah.
questions, comments?
So first of all, the alternative to have the footprint of the structure so that the 70-foot zone does not encroach into the ESHA. It looks like it wouldn't have to move that much to avoid that. What's the reason that it wasn't situated that way?
This is the owner, Rodney Eckerman. Well, one of the items was we would then be triggering a grading variance if we moved lower. Additionally, there is below the site, the on-site wastewater, the retention basin for any drainage caused by the development, and a neighboring lot easement as well as a Caltrans easement. One of the things the city biologist did was put in the plan, and this is a fuel modification plan approved by the fire department at this stage, some additional oak trees which are good natural habitat, as well as they've proven to assist in any kind of fire conditions. And so that has been improved, which minimizes the clearance. Of course, the fire department always withholds the right to be able to ask for additional clearance up to these zones. So that's part of why we ended up putting the house where it is to avoid triggering other variances, including the 2-story height variance as well.
Okay, so I would recommend that the benefits of moving the project out of the ESHA zone be considered in light of potential other variances that it might trigger. As far as the grading variance, what would that entail? And is that something that might be feasible to be able to move it out of the ESHA zone, at least for the 70-foot clear zone? Because the C zone, the yellow, that's just removing dead brush. So I think that would be acceptable, where the B zone is a lot heavier thinning and separation. And so that would be a lot more impactful.
Now, I know this is not specifically, an issue, but this was an area that was mapped aerially, our biologist has pointed out, versus an actual inventory survey. The adjacent lots you will see clear way further up the hill, including up the mountain. And in addition to that, another consideration was this had been a burnout area in the Woolsey fires. So when they went out and did their inventory, they didn't see any of the natural habitats that you're referring to. It's majorly sagebrush, and that's why they've included in this plan the oak tree environment that is a preferred natural habitat, I guess, and is agreed to by the fire department. So to move the house at this point in time, after all the studies we've done, would be a Herculean effort because it would be a completely redesign. So we think that this has been well thought out in this process. And as in the biologist study, they are, referring to us working with the fire department to minimize clearance in a couple of specific areas that do, go into that B zone area.
So Rodney, that's a recommendation that Noah, is giving, and I'm gonna make sure that it's noted. So
yeah.
Noah, is that the only recommendation that you have, or do you have others for the project?
I do have one more. And I hear what you're saying about the oak trees, and I do appreciate that. And they are protective. Their canopies are evergreen. Their understory is moist, and that combination does provide an ember catch. And allows those embers to kind of go out quickly without spreading further if the appropriate trimming is done up to where the tree canopy is. So I really appreciate that. It was mentioned there that that section where the drainage is, which is not currently being defined as a riparian area. I'm guessing because the vegetation that's there does not support that designation because it's probably a bunch of weeds, right?
That is true. It's also a drainage area that they noted in looking at historical views that changed dramatically after the Woolsey fire and heavy rains. So it is not a drainage area it was minimally pre-existing those Woolsey fires. So that was the other part of it, is it has not been designated as any type of noted drainage area. Okay.
If it's holding some water, at least for a portion of the year, it could be an appropriate area to have sort of that oak woodland environment that's supported by this project. And so, you know, with less irrigation, because, you know, there's probably some groundwater there as well where the drainage is coming through. So I think that would be an appropriate place to put those oak trees and take advantage of that drainage area and maybe help it transition to become an actual riparian area.
So, Noah, I just want to make sure that I get this right. So you're recommending that they extend some of their landscaping plan to be nearer to the drainage that includes the oak woodland that they're proposing?
Yeah, so sort of like a restoration to improve the drainage that's not currently able to sustain riparian habitat and make it so it does.
I
Yes,
understand.
that's my
Okay.
recommendation.
Perfect. Yeah, I just want to make sure I get the wording right. But that sounds great.
Yeah, Courtney, we would certainly be agreeable to that on the portion that's on my property. Absolutely.
Okay, Noah, so I just want to make sure, is that all your comments for now before I move on to other ERB members?
Yes, thank you so much.
Okay, great. Clark, I see your hand raised, so we'll go to you.
Yeah, I have some questions for staff. This is the first project I've reviewed, been part of the review team that had mitigation fees paid, and I'm wondering the determination of those fees. I have some understanding, but the potential use versus, you know, on-site recommendations such as, you know, what Noah just made regarding the particulars here. How does it work once those fees are, first of all, how are they generally determined? Is it just acreage of impact? Is it only for the violation? Is it for the violation plus the impact shown on the site plan? What's the general approach here?
Yes, so it is, the in lieu fees are calculated based on the area of impact. So not just any unpermitted ESHA clearance, but anything that's proposed to be impacted with regard to the ESHA. The fees are calculated by the Santa Monica Mountains Conservancy. So I believe the property owner has been in communication to start to work out those calculations. The calculations are also based on the type of impact. So, you know, there's a different impact between zone B and zone C, for example. So those fees.
Yeah, that was one of my questions was, yeah. And so that presumes that, because I appreciate the owner's discussion about, you know, overall resource conserving approaches by building less. There's less embodied energy, there's all that, then is, you know, potential for the site and perhaps the marketplace for the site. However, you know, and this is, I realize this is standard, but it's, you know, just the graphic showing zone A, B, which is not 70, but it's 100 on the map, and 200 in a kind of equivalent way. I want to make sure that the owner understands that, you know, up to 200 is possible with fire department requirement, but it is not the standard, and that there's a body of research out there that shows that statistically, and again, I understand this is the Woolsey zone, there's downsloping winds, you know, this is a high fire return frequency area, so it's important. But statistically speaking, the structures is no more at risk, depending on the conditions beyond 100 feet than it would be at 101, or it's just that the research does not support the fact that, you know, you're significantly safer by doing anything to natural habitat beyond 100 feet from the home. So I just want to make a plug that, as you know, representing the RCD, we do have, if you look at defensiblespace.org, that's a coordinated website that really like all applicants to look at, to understand that it's like a logarithmic scale. It's and it starts with a home, and really once you move to the landscape, the benefit of any treatment relative to reducing flammability drops off to zero very quickly. The first 5 feet is critical. The next 30 is irrigation zone, so it's good to have soil moisture, but rapidly, and again, I understand the recent history here and the long-term history of fire return, but I'm a little concerned when you pay a fee based on impacts that it might suggest, along with the owner's comment about how the other people have historic clearance zones that are well beyond what is now, you know, required. Just don't believe that that's a good precedent. In fact, there are some studies coming out on post-Woolsey that correlate structure loss most highly with the highest percentage of bare earth that was adjacent to buildings. So it's not what you think, that you know, smooth, undisturbed landscape is correlated in Woolsey to structure loss, which was not, you know, you wouldn't expect. But anyway, so this is really just an opportunity to inform the owner about the specifics of that, and recommend taking a look at that defensiblespace.org website and working with fire department. You know, Captain Durbin is very aware of these things, and LA County is pretty good, but you know, the fact that we're seeing a map that shows the same dashed line out to 200, I know that's just a graphic convention, but it's a very different thing, right? Zone A, B, and C.
Right.
Going back to my question for staff, you know, I'm not familiar, you know, we like to see, so I'm going to echo Noe's recommendation for on-site remediation and restoration. And it's pretty evident in the aerial that you can see all of the sediment that was deposited down this drainage. Yes, that disturbed the drainage. It is a, you know, although human generated, it is a natural impact, and but it's really important to help it recover as opposed to letting it recover as any kind of invasive weed patch, fine flashy fuels ending up where you should have heavier density increases the chance of ignition proximate to your home. So it's a good idea, not just for the environment, but as part of that whole fire adapted development response. So I would also encourage that you look at uphill restoration, particularly where you do have the opportunity for riparian type, you know, tree canopy. It looks like at the bottom of that drainage, there might be a single oak. It's hard to tell. I haven't visited the site, but, you know, so that water's getting delivered to something that's trying to become, you know, an oak dominated area. So, yeah, if you could take a look at that and look at restoration, which is, given the topography, is a beautification thing, and part of that open space that you now have privately is, you know, it'd be a benefit in a lot of ways.
Perfect. Thank you, Clark. So those recommendations, so just want to make sure the recommendation for on-site remediation or restoration that is, I want to clarify, that's instead of the in lieu fee?
No, that's.
Okay, in
I-
addition?
Yeah, that
Okay.
first was a question for staff, how it works, and I didn't stop talking yet enough to hear, if that ever is coming back, or I think that just goes into a big pot for overall purchases and protections in the Santa Monica's. So in addition to that, I think part of a Firewise landscape is habitat restoration, particularly within the closer zones. And so it's not just limited to the drainage. Oh, that's an opportunity. I think, again, there are benefits to even shrubland natural habitats over fine fuels in terms of ignition probability. So, we talk about trees and that's great. And more of those trees, if you can get the fire department to go canopy to canopy at maturity, oaks take a long time to grow. So, the density is a little hopeful. The canopy size shown on the plans is, I don't know, that's at some maturity level, right? Those aren't 5-gallon plants. So, I think a more extensive plan for restoration that also accomplishes defensible space is my most important recommendation in all zones.
Perfect. Perfect. I have that written down. Thank you, Clark.
I have a quick question, Clark. Thank you for your comments. I wanted to go back to the initial comments regarding the fuel modification. Are you suggesting that the applicant, well, the owner potentially revisit the fuel modification requirements to possibly have a reduced buffer from the residents? I wanted to make sure I understood that.
Well, I did not see in the documents good definition of the difference in treatment that was negotiated or proposed in those zones. So perhaps I missed it, but again, I go back to the graphic, which just says, okay, it's one, it's A, B, and C. I certainly wouldn't want to see C determined. No one mentioned it should be just removing dead material, but I did not see any. There's not a landscape plan for fuel modification approval. It just means that, okay, you could impact potentially, so then your fees are calculated. Again, I heard a comment about what the other neighbors are doing, and that's not a good precedent and shouldn't be repeated.
Yeah.
So
No, and by the way,
yeah, I guess I'm suggesting, I don't know the specifics, but I'm asking the applicant to work with the fire department to minimize negative impacts and to maximize positive ones, right? Impact can go two ways, right? Like build back for defensible space habitat where you can.
Courtney, can I speak for a second? I'd like to answer a couple of those questions. I think the biology report, or my biologist, is in complete concurrence with what you're saying. In fact, they have suggested that we only clear within the 30 to 100 foot zone B area, that there's no clearing in the outside area of that. My reference to the other properties clearance was not with respect to I should be able to clear more. That's how we accidentally over cleared during fire season. I used somebody who knew hadn't been clearing the lot. And so that's what took place there. I have no intention of ever clearing a greater area. One other thing to point out is the 13 oak trees that are on the landscape plan are designated to be 36-inch coastal live oaks, 36-inch box. So those are larger plants. But I've also been talking to LA Fire, and the Santa Monica Environmental has a program where they will actually give you smaller oak trees. So I think the intention is to place additional smaller oak trees in addition to those large 36-inch box oak trees that would be planted. So the other thing I would say is the biologist is absolutely saying what you're saying, which is to work with the LA County Fire Department to minimize clearing in these areas and to put in the oak trees as part of that program, which the County of Los Angeles has approved that fuel modification plan at this stage.
Great. Okay, thank you for that.
Thank you, Clark, for your recommendations. I have them written down. Are there any other ERB members that would like to comment at this time? Patrick, there we go. I think you're muted, Patrick.
There we go. Sorry, guys.
It's okay.
Figure I'd figure this out by now. But yeah, thanks everyone for your time. A couple of questions at this point, not necessarily recommendations. I do see that the project is proposing an infiltration system, I assume for MS4 requirements. I didn't see anything explicitly approving that from a geotechnical perspective. I just want to make sure that the soils engineer has reviewed that, provided percolation testing and everything necessary to show that that is feasible for this site.
They have.
Okay.
So yeah, Geoservices has, yes.
And I'm assuming they were okay then too with the proximity of this system compared to the location of the leach field?
Yes.
Yeah, it's just a little unique seeing it below the leach field like that, but just wanted to confirm that they reviewed that.
Yeah, and the geologists on the project actually, they're the ones who designed the on-site wastewater treatment plant. So they were in continuous communication with the civil engineer. There wasn't a third party designing that element. So I think that probably helped the coordination.
And then regarding the fire access, I see that the plans indicate that the entire access road is being exempted from the 1,000 cubic yard grading limitation that the city has. Is there a particular reason for that? The reason I ask is it's typical to exempt anything beyond the 15-foot minimum width required from the city, because you know the county is requiring 20 feet, which is typical in this case, but the 15 feet that the city requires for the driveway is typically considered non-exempt. So I was just curious if there was particular direction either from the city or the fire department to consider that exempt.
Thank you for that question. It is a city standard to exempt only the additional 5 feet, like you mentioned. So I'm going to pull up the grading plan just to make sure we appropriately calculated that grading. Because again, the initial 15 feet of that driveway is subject to the non-exempt threshold of 1,000 cubic yards. So then I'm going to look that up now just to see. While I'm pulling that up, Rodney, do you have recollection of the grading calculations for your project?
I don't know that off the top of my head.
No worries, I'll pull it up.
Okay.
Yeah, because sometimes there is direction either from the city or otherwise that you know the roadway is in a particular configuration just to satisfy county requirements. So you are able to exempt more than the standard, but I just wanted to make sure that was the case here.
Yeah. Ron, are you on? Do you know by any chance? Architect's on.
I don't know. I think I unmuted correctly. If you guys can hear me. So I can't recall exactly, but you know, definitely our driveway design is a direct result of the county fire department requirements. And the placement of the house was sort of based on sort of all these sort of minimums that we worked with, which was the infiltration, the septic, etc., to sort of get our clearances, and then you know as well as respect to ESHA. So that's kind of what I can tell you.
Yeah. We actually submitted to fire back in July of last year. So we started the process with fire about the same time as the city because we wanted to have the two coordinated and not, you know, one send us one direction, another. So
Yeah, of course.
Yep.
And while that's being researched, just a couple other comments. I would just want to confirm that the project is disturbing less than an acre to be below the state SWIP requirements.
It is. The Caltrans did require us to do what is it? Let me tell you exactly what, trying to remember the name of it, but it is under an acre, yes. So
Okay.
there is, yeah.
I guess my only official request with that would just be have them reconfirm that, just considering the area that's being disturbed with the ESHA mitigation and you know, some of the stuff beyond the typical improvements.
Right. I'm just pulling that up real quick. So Caltrans did require us to do a WPCP which I guess, and we have done a SWIP, although we're required for a local SWIP, not a state SWIP, because we are under the 1 acre requirement. And the WPCP was required to be done by a QSP practitioner. So that was done as part of Caltrans, but it wasn't a city or a public works requirement. But we did do the local SWIP, but we were not required because we're under an acre to do the state SWIP.
Okay. Yeah, I would just ask them to confirm that.
Yeah. Yeah, I know that's been reviewed by Civil and Public Works.
Okay.
So we did, by the way, the plans are quite a far along because we did get the approval to do a concurrent submittal, obviously at my risk with changes, if any changes came out of planning. And so we've already been through our first phase of building and safety submittal as well, where they do additional look at the drainage and things of that nature.
And a comment specific to the drainage. It's a unique design, and I'd say I'm kind of a fan of it, to be honest, with the infiltration system. But my only concern with that is not having a standard primary overflow in that system. You know, these infiltration basins are designed for a 85th percentile event, where the pipes are designed for either a 50 or 100-year event. So the system is intended to overflow. And then I see that there's the riprap pad below it. But I would just want to make sure that there's no concern for sediment, erosion, debris, or otherwise overtopping that system and not necessarily being dissipated by the riprap and making its way down to PCH.
Right. And I think that's actually, you know, I'm a novice at this. Sounds like you know it quite well. But I think that's the reason why Caltrans required us to do the WPCP, because although we were retaining everything on site, if in fact there was any overflow, what were those dynamics?
Okay.
Okay, so I was able to pull up the most recent grading plans, and it looks like the civil engineer put all of the grading associated with the driveway as exempt. So they're going to need to recalculate that to ensure that only the additional remaining 5 feet is calculated as exempt.
And I would say, just to add on to that a little bit, I would ask maybe for some clarification too, that the alignment of the road, if it's specific to satisfying a county fire requirement, then there are circumstances where you can exempt the whole thing. So I don't want to necessarily say there has to be some redesign or something like that. But from my side, the recommendation would be confirm that the alignment is to satisfy county requirements. And then there is precedent for the city exempting the entirety of the road. But from my side, that would be my recommendation.
Right. Just a couple of things. The original road design that we put forth had us closer to PCH, which involved a little less road. And then when we got Caltrans comments, they had us move up the hill. So we did that. And then when we got fire department comments, they made us increase the sweeps because they have certain sweep limitations for the fire trucks.
Right.
So that actually did add a bit and moved us a little further up the hill on the entrance as we proceeded through this, because we were dealing with various department comments through that process.
So Patrick, I have your recommendations that you just spoke about, asking for clarification about the alignment of the road to make sure that it's satisfying county requirements, and if needed, recommend that you guys take another look at the grading calculations if needed. And then I just wanted to make sure if this was a formal recommendation of yours, that the applicant team confirms that they are under an acre of disturbance while taking into account the added restoration of the ESHA and things that have been spoken about today.
Right.
Is that correct?
Yeah.
Okay. Perfect. So I have those two recommendations. Are there any other recommendations, questions, comments from you, Patrick?
No, not for me.
Okay, thank you. Those were really good. Okay, perfect. Ron, did you have?
Yeah, I could ask for just a little clarification on the, the driveway. I mean, the driveway is designed to comply to the county requirement. And Patrick, I believe, mentioned that, well, and there's a couple things true about it's related to the county requirement, and it's also there's not a lot of grading because the basically we follow the slope of the hillside, so there's not a lot of grading associated with it. But I wanted to understand how we would if we need an exemption with regard to the 15-foot portion that the city requires. How does that work?
So the civil engineer will look at the grading within the initial 15-foot width of the driveway, and they would calculate what the cubic yardage is for that.
Okay.
And that would be subject to the maximum 1,000 cubic yards of grading. And then the additional 5-foot width would be considered exempt because it's needed to comply with the fire department's requirements.
Okay, thank you.
So, I'm going to piggyback off of that comment and off of Clark's and Noah's comments regarding the siting of the residents. So I'm going to also ask that you beef up the feasible alternatives analysis, because again, if moving the residents closer to PCH would also reduce the amount of project grading, we would need to be able to justify whatever determination we're going to make regarding the grading. Does that make sense? So like resiting the residents might potentially reduce the amount of grading, because currently without redoing the calculations, I mean, it's a significant amount of grading associated with that driveway, about 1,400 cubic yards, all of which is currently calculated as exempt.
So from an owner perspective, we've done multiple studies. We've worked with everybody from the fire department to Caltrans to civil engineering within the city to planning to biology to situate in the site we're in. And if we were to move this site 5 feet, it's probably $100,000 worth of redesign minimum. And I know this is not about money, but I've been beyond careful in every step of the way and making sure we had an agreed upon location. And one of the things that was brought up is we were going to need an ERB review regardless of whether we move this 50 feet or 100 feet, because the process would take place because we would trigger being inside of 200 feet. So, clearly we could have moved 5 feet or 7 feet early in this process, but we had a concurrence amongst all departments and all parties that this was a well-situated site. So I just want to bring that up because, we can study anything all day long, but we've been doing studies as this process has continued. And this will be to move the project 3 feet is a monumental effort, as any one of you or civil architectural backgrounds would know. So I just want to bring that up when we start talking about, because we did initial studies, then we did additional studies, and then we did additional studies, and we've been very diligent this whole process. So I want to make a statement as okay.
But we're currently at the stage for the Environmental Review Board technical review of the project. and it's within their purview to make recommendations. And
Right.
one of the coastal permit findings is, to discuss what those recommendations were.
Sure.
And now that we're going to be presenting this to the Planning Commission, I'm asking for a beefed up feasible alternatives analysis in light of the recommendations that are provided today.
Okay. Absolutely. We'll get additional information.
Okay, great. Jennifer or Marnie, do you guys have any comments on the project?
The comment that I have doesn't relate to ESHA, so I don't think that it's something that we can comment on, but just the glass that's in the back of the proposed dwelling, I think could cause a large number of bird strikes and death of birds, especially raptors and songbirds there. So I don't think that can be an official recommendation since we're not being asked. It doesn't fall under the purview, but just wanted to make a note of that.
I think that's an expertise that you bring to ERB, Jennifer. So I think that's completely valid. And if you'd like to make that a formal recommendation, that's also completely valid. So
okay. Thank you. Yeah,
Yeah.
I mean, there is bird safe glass that's
Yes.
just it's treated differently so that the bird doesn't, it perceives the glass as a solid wall, though you don't lose any of the advantages of the beautiful views, but will help to protect the wildlife.
Marnie, I wonder, Marnie, we have a trellis structure that goes off the back of the entire house. I don't know if that's noted in the plans, but does that help with that condition? Because it kind of puts, a sheltering semi-shade area between that glass and any entrance from any birds. There's not like I don't know of any glass, Ron, you would have to speak on this, that is directly off without that trellis structure off the house.
Certainly not toward the rear.
Yeah.
We have conventional windows. We have obviously we have large doors, sliding doors, etc., and windows that face the PCH and the view. I am familiar with the bird strike glass, but yeah, we have this pretty deep trellis. I want to say it's about 12 feet deep that extends from the house directly away. So I don't know how that affects bird patterns at all.
Well, I don't exactly know where the trellis would be sited, but I would say that any kind of vegetation like that is going to attract like small songbirds. And so small songbirds are going to attract large raptors. So it actually might be more of a detriment to the birds. But if you're aware of the glass, my recommendation is that it be put into place for this home, because I don't think anybody wants to have that situation where there's dead birds at their doorstep.
Not at all.
Perfect. Thank you, Jennifer. I've got that recommendation written down. Don't ever be worried that you're making the wrong comment. Just at least, speak up, and we appreciate everything that you guys are saying in this ERB. So thank you for that comment. Are there any other recommendations that you have at this time, Jennifer?
No, thank you.
Okay. And then Marnie, I'll pick on you now.
Oh, thank you. I just want to say that I think all the comments that have been made so far are very interesting and thorough, and thank everybody for their thoroughness. And it looks like the grading volume issue will be the issue that needs to be addressed.
Okay, wonderful. Thank you, Marnie. Any formal recommendations at this time, or?
No, I just agree with the recommendations that have been made.
Okay. I just wanted to double check that everybody, is good to go before we close out this ERB meeting. No questions, comments. Okay, perfect. Well, again, I just wanted to thank everybody for your time. I know we're having a few ERB meetings here back to back. So really appreciate everybody's time and expertise at these. And looks like Gail has her hand raised, so she might need to say something.
Before we leave, I just wanted to mention that you did receive an email for the July 17th special meeting we're going to have of ERB for one item, and then we are going to have one on July 24th for 2 more items.
Lots of items. Thank you guys so much for all of your time. I know there's a lot of review of documentation prior to these meetings. So again, I know I keep saying it, but we really do appreciate your expertise and hopefully we can relay that to Noah because she left early. So thank you all.
Hey, real quick, you got Gail, well, we're on the phone. I'm on jury duty the week of July 15. So if you just make a note, I might be able to, you know how it works.
Okay,
I don't know.
understood.
Okay.
And Gail, you said the
Thank you.
24th? Sorry.
Yes, the 17th, 1 item, 24th, 2 items.
I gotcha. I have to put it in my schedule really early. Okay. Thank you.
Right, thank
guys.
you very much, everyone.
Have a good Wednesday.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you for your time.
Bye.